Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering that every answer you had ever relied upon had suddenly disappeared. The people you trusted no longer seemed certain. The traditions you inherited no longer explained the world around you. The stories that had guided your family for generations suddenly felt incomplete. What would you do? Would you search for another authority? Or would you begin trusting yourself? This question is not just about history. It is about every one of us. Because whether we realize it or not, humanity has already lived through exactly this transformation. If you've ever been told to follow your heart, to believe in yourself, or to be true to yourself, then you have already inherited one of the greatest revolutions in human history. Today, these ideas feel so natural that we rarely stop to ask where they came from. We assume people have always believed that happiness comes from looking inward, that purpose is something we create for ourselves, and that each individual should decide what is right for their own life. But for most of human history, almost nobody thought this way. The individual was not the center of the story. God was. The family was. The tribe was. Tradition was. Identity was something you inherited, not something you invented. By the end of this journey, you will begin to understand how one of the greatest psychological shifts in history quietly transformed the human mind. You will see how science gradually replaced mystery with explanation, how confidence in human reason gave birth to humanism, and why that same movement, while producing extraordinary progress, also left many people feeling more isolated, anxious, and uncertain than ever before. Perhaps the greatest irony of modern civilization is that just as we became more powerful than any generation before us, many of us became less certain about who we really are. Imagine living in Europe 500 years ago. Every important question about life already appeared to have an answer. If someone asked why the seasons changed, why disease spread, why kings ruled, why suffering existed, or what happened after death, the answers were deeply connected to religion and tradition. The universe seemed ordered. Every person had a place within that order. Life was not necessarily easier, but it was understandable. There was comfort in believing that history followed a larger plan and that human beings occupied a meaningful place within it. Then, slowly, something remarkable began to happen. Curious men and women started asking questions that earlier generations had rarely dared to ask. They looked through telescopes instead of simply looking toward the heavens. They observed nature rather than relying only on inherited explanations. They measured. They experimented. They doubted. They discovered that planets did not move exactly as people had imagined. They learned that diseases often had natural causes. They realized that lightning, eclipses, and earthquakes followed patterns that could be investigated rather than simply feared. Every discovery explained something that had once been mysterious, and every explanation slightly reduced humanity's dependence on the unknown. What made this revolution extraordinary was not simply that science produced better answers. It changed something much deeper inside the human mind. For thousands of years, uncertainty had encouraged people to look upward. Every unanswered question naturally pointed beyond humanity. But as knowledge expanded, confidence expanded with it. People slowly began believing that perhaps human beings themselves possessed the ability to understand reality. The authority that had once belonged almost entirely to divine revelation gradually shifted toward human observation, human reasoning, and human intelligence. This was not merely a scientific revolution, it was a psychological revolution. Think about a young child learning to walk. At first, the child depends completely on the parent. Every decision requires guidance, every danger requires protection. But as confidence grows, dependence naturally decreases.
I can do it myself.
Human civilization experienced something surprisingly similar. As knowledge accumulated, humanity became less psychologically dependent on external authority. We discovered how to navigate oceans, build machines, cure diseases, predict the movement of stars, and eventually send people into space. With every success, belief in human capability grew stronger. Slowly, almost without noticing, we began replacing the question, what does God want? With another question, what can humans accomplish? This new confidence became the foundation of what historians call humanism. At its heart, humanism was not about rejecting religion. It was about believing that human beings possessed remarkable capacities for reason, creativity, compassion, and progress. Instead of seeing humanity primarily as dependent on divine intervention, humanism encouraged people to believe that many of the world's problems could be solved through education, science, cooperation, and human effort. It inspired extraordinary achievements. Medicine dramatically increased life expectancy. Democratic ideals spread across much of the world. Literacy expanded. Poverty declined in many regions. Scientific discovery accelerated at a pace that would have seemed miraculous only a few centuries earlier. Humanity achieved things that previous civilizations could scarcely imagine. Yet every revolution creates consequences that its pioneers never fully anticipate. The more we trusted ourselves, the less we relied on shared traditions. The more freedom we gained, the more responsibility we inherited. For thousands of years, purpose had often been received. Now it had to be created. Meaning was no longer simply given by the community into which one was born. Increasingly, each individual had to answer life's biggest questions alone. And perhaps this is where the story begins to take an unexpected turn. Thank you for watching. Please comment, share, and subscribe for more.